He is among the few physicians in the nation that is triple board certified, having completed training and certification in 3 fields, including internal medicine, endocrinology and metabolism, and hospice and palliative care. He has published peer-reviewed articles and book chapters in the areas of infectious disease, endocrinology, and cancer. He uses Restore in his clinic, which is called the Revolution Health Center, and has seen clinically significant improvements in patients with leaky gut, gluten intolerance, autism, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, such as Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome. Now, I don't know about you moms that are out there, but those issues are all issues that I see in my family and our friends and families, and it's no longer acceptable. We have a skyrocketing health crisis in America today, and I want to talk a little bit about that. That's why we're here with you today. We are so thrilled to have scientists like you researching and coming from sources. You're going to talk more about this product Restore that comes from the earth and from plant sources, and we're just thrilled because this is so important. Glyphosate is everywhere now. It's in our rain, our soil, our water, our breast milk, even Pediasure feeding tube liquid that's given to children with cancer. It's been recently found on sanitary pads, even the gauze that's put on, our sick people in hospitals with wounds. It's glyphosate has permeated our entire, environment. So when you think about how overwhelmingly the world is so inundated by this chemical, and about the health impacts, the chelation, the endocrine disruption, the DNA mutagen, and now a probable carcinogen, all types of health impacts. It can be very overwhelming. But when I hear about products like Restore, which we're going to talk about more, it gives me hope, because I think, well, at least maybe we could take some preventative action until the EPA gets it together, right? And until we ban it, and until they stop raising the allowable levels and get our system back to one that is based on health and actually nurturing the people. Because like you said, the EPA raised the levels in 2013 on things such as corn went from 2.5 up to 13 parts per million, or very small levels up to 7 parts per million on our tea, or 5 parts per million on potatoes. So the levels that they're allowing on our food are just ridiculous if you take them into consideration for health. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So we've talked a little bit about why gut health is so important. Or unless do you want to touch a little bit more on that? What happens when the gut is destroyed, and how does that affect the brain?
Yeah, so the tight junction system starts at the gut. The gut is your nearest barrier system to your environment. So all of the toxins that have been mentioned, pharmaceuticals, you can go on down the list, all of those need to be intelligently managed across that gut membrane. Sitting behind that membrane is 80% of your immune system, essentially. So you've got this huge lining called the gastrointestinal associated lymphatic tissue. That structure accounts for 80% of the antibodies that are produced in your whole body. And so when we think about leak, and it's affecting everything from the gut to the blood vessels, to the blood-brain barrier, to the kidney, this is definitely a big elephant in the room, because it's the one that leads to this massive stimulation and overstimulation of the immune system itself. The root cause of all chronic disease is ultimately going to tie back to inflammation. Mm-hmm. And this is a form of chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation happens when you stub your toe or you get a cut on your finger. Acute inflammation can save the moment by killing the bacteria there or helping in wound repair. But chronic inflammation is a totally different phenomenon, where instead of getting a healthy response to injury, the immune system itself starts to induce oxidative stress, which is that acid buildup that we mentioned earlier. And as oxidative stress and acidity build, it turns into its own source of injury. And so the immune system literally becomes its own problem in chronic inflammation. Unfortunately, then, the medications that we put our kids and our adults on tend to fuel that problem at its foundation by further weakening tight junctions and causing worsening leak. And so the gut is an incredible system in and of itself, but really the gatekeeper for the whole rest. The reason for that is that when you take glyphosate, or gluten, the breakdown product gluten, which is gliadin. Gliadin and glyphosate act through the exact same toxin pathway at the tight junction. And now, as you mentioned, the EPA is allowing more and more glyphosate on everything. Wheat is one of the highest areas of glyphosate exposure, because we're now spraying our wheat fields to kill the wheat so that we can actually get 2 harvests out of each season in northern climates. And so that practice started in 1992 and has been increasing in acreage ever since then. So, so the combination of gliadin or gluten breakdown product and glyphosate in the same product is really a disaster. And what's happening as those hit the gut lining is your intestinal lining is producing a compound called zonulin, Z-O-N-U-L-I-N. Zonulin is the toxin pathway that directly then damages the tight junction. Unfortunately, zonulin goes systemic, and so zonulin starts to circulate through the bloodstream, weakening tight junctions in the blood vessel wall, blood-brain barrier, kidney barriers, etc. And so it, for many reasons, that gluten's or that gut wall is your front line, and its injury leads to systemic injury as zonulin is produced and going systemic.
Okay, well, thank you very much. To understand why the gut is so important is really something that most Americans aren't thinking about nowadays, and are learning for the first hand. We have to protect our gut lining and the gut bacteria. Tell us how Restore does that.
Yeah, so it's worth noting that this is not my intelligence that created this product. It's worth noting that I accidentally found this, and it was just the universe kind of taking the blinders off a very lost doctor that allowed this to be discovered. And what happened is I was going through white papers in soil science and flipped a page and found a molecule sitting there in soil that looked a lot like the chemotherapy compounds I was developing at the University of Virginia. And it suddenly dawned on me that, oh my gosh, the bacteria in the soil are making a communication network just like the mitochondria inside the cells that I had been working on in cancer. And so it was a really nice aha moment where the blinders came off. And then Dr. Gilday, one of my colleagues, has really done the lion's share of the effort of identifying the function of Restore as the antidote to tight junction weakening. And so we're looking at this situation where the compounds within Restore, which are made by the bacteria in soil, we're extracting those from ancient soils, putting those into a liquid state and activating the oxygen-hydrogen binding sites. And suddenly you get this active communication network. We think of it as a liquid circuit board that goes out into the gut and beyond, that starts to bring the intelligence back to those membranes. And you can see reconstitution of three-dimensional structure happen very quickly under the microscope. And that's from this very exquisite support and promotion of these tight junctions between the cells that Restore facilitates.
So Restore helps not only close the tight junctions, prevent the leaky gut, but it helps to restore the network in the gut that communicates with all of the bacteria and the microbes in the gut. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And so you have a direct effect on the structure, and then you have a direct effect on the biome or the community of the gut. And so that direct effect on the community is very much like putting a wireless network back up and running. The gut in a perfect state is about 30,000 species. The NIH started a big global effort to work on the genome or DNA library of the human gut in 2010. And in that project, we found that there's about 10,000 species that can be identified if you look across about 20 or 40 subjects. But any single individual now is unlikely to be having 10,000 species. The loss of all of these species has been direct result of not only our farming practices, in which we destroyed the biome of the soil, i.e. subsequently destroying the nutrient density in our food, thus decreasing the need for lots of species to deal with that food. And on top of that, we put the herbicide, which is a direct antibiotic, and then we started the antibiotic era with penicillin and all of the other drugs that would follow, all of them annihilating the biome. And so we've had
I have to jump in here with this because a farmer described this and really made sense to me. that normally a field, a organic or conventional field, will have a crop that when on one end of the crop a blight or pest or fungus will hit that crop. By the time it gets, that blight or fungus gets to the other end of the crop, usually that crop is resistant. So what happens is the microbes in the soil in that network talk to each other and say, hey, this bad guy is coming over here. You might want to beef up your, I don't know, manganese or your zinc or, you know, whatever minerals or vitamins they need. And somehow they magically do that. And that's normally what happens in nature. But because of GMOs and toxic pesticides destroying the microbes in the soil from all of these toxic pesticides, they can no longer communicate with each other like that. So especially a GMO crop will get wiped out by a fungus and you know, or pathogenic bacteria. And that's what's happening now in our gut. Our network is being wiped out. And unfortunately, some of us, we're just learning now that putting in some probiotics to beef up those good bacteria only works for so long, because most of those probiotics only have about 6 or 7 different bacteria. Is that correct? Then you're developing a monoculture of probiotics in your gut.
Exactly. And, you know, I don't want to discount the probiotic field, because it was an important stepping stone for us, in that you look back 20 years ago, we thought that all bacteria were bad. And so as doctors, we were just trying to kill bacteria at every shot. It was antibacterial soaps. It was, you know, you name it, not to mention the antibiotics themselves. But so the probiotics was kind of the advent of, oh, bacteria are good. Well, now we know bacteria are the whole story. You know, you don't have human health if you don't have bacterial health. And so probiotics were an important stepping stone, but you're exactly spot on that they are not an end in of themselves. The typical probiotic having 3 species to maybe 24 species in it. The most expensive ones on the market now, running a couple $100s a month, have 100 species in them. Unfortunately, they add lots and lots of billions of copies of each of those bacteria to try to convince the consumer that they're doing something even better. And so it used to be 1 billion copies, then it was 35 billion copies, and now we have a brand with over 1 trillion copies of each species in it. That's a disaster to an ecosystem. You can imagine taking, you know, you say, well, these are good bacteria. Well, if you take 6 species of good bacteria and dump it at trillions of copies into an ecosystem, you're going to lose that 10,000 species that we may have now, and you're certainly not going to get back to the 30,000 species that we once had. And so Restore is the next generation. And so what Restore is doing is putting back the communication between the bacteria to let them engineer an ecosystem, rather than us as doctors or consumers trying to micromanage our genome by saying, well, I'll take 6 of these, and then I'll take those 10 over there, and then I'll take those 8 over there. There's no way as a consumer or a doctor you know how to program a balanced ecosystem of 10,000 or 30,000 species. And so we've given that mission up and said, let the bacteria figure it out for themselves. And every day in clinic, we're stunned by the results of just how intelligent that ecosystem can get.
Awesome. Thank you so much to both of you for being with us. Please thank the scientists and doctors on your entire team. I know it takes a whole team. And I also want to give a shout out to Thinking Moms Revolution, who really, you know, just said, Zen, you got to check out this product. And I thank them for doing their webinars as well. And, you know, we want to say thank you to every mom who keeps going. It is really hard sometimes. There are a lot of people out there that are struggling. And this is like the 12th product they might try, and they think, you know, this may not do anything. And, you know, we just want to let you know that we are also going through those struggles. There are many of us moms that are dealing with this. And I think that the winning tactic is just to keep trying and to keep going forward and to never give up. You know, we always say that we will not stop. We will not give up, because the love for our children will never end. And we want to thank all the scientists and the farmers out there that are researching and that are courageous and that are making a difference with really just amazing science and using resources from nature. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zen.